What's up everyone, my name is Nick and welcome back to another video. On this channel I am documenting the process of developing a 2D twin stick shooter built using the Unity game engine. In last week's video I went through the process of converting my project to use scriptable objects for its architecture. The prototype was initially built without a whole lot of consideration to the architecture, but I got the prototype just to a point where I knew I couldn't take it any further without putting some serious thought into the architecture, so I identified scriptable objects as a way for moving forward with that. In this week's video, I started doing some actual development again on the game and adding new features, so I'm really excited to keep going on those and show you guys what they're all about. So let's check it out. The first thing I did this week was to do a final review pass on my refactoring branch before checking it into master. For those of you who don't know what branching is, I use a tool called Git, which is a version control system. It allows you to create branches, which are working copies of your game, that you can add changes to. This allows you to develop new features in isolation, and when they are fully tested and working, you can merge those changes back into your master branch. So once I merged my refactoring branch, it was time to decide on what to do this week. Being so early in development, there are many things in my backlog that were tempting to pull over into my doing column this week on Trello. I decided to start working on a speed boosting system because it is one of the core gameplay mechanics in the game, and I want to have a lot of time to test it and refine it so that it looks and feels great to use. The idea for the boosting system is that you can hold a trigger button on the controller to engage your boost. While boosting, your speed increases and it allows you to destroy enemies when you boost into them. And doing that builds a score multiplier based on how many enemies you can destroy while you're actually boosting. This is a powerful weapon for the player, and it would be unbalanced if you could use it indefinitely, so I came up with a risk-reward kind of system where you can boost at any time, but if you use it for too long, your ship is going to explode. With this rough plan in place, I got to work. Once I got to work, I started to quickly throw some code together to check for player input on the trigger button on the controller. And when controller input was registered, I would apply some additional speed to the player. The first thing I noticed right away, however, was that I didn't like that it worked like a light switch. You hold the button and you're immediately boosting, and then you let the button go and you're immediately back to your normal speed. So I started writing some acceleration code, which takes an acceleration delta. I made that into a scriptable object, and it takes this value and applies it to the player's current speed up to a maximum boost speed for acceleration or down to the player's base speed for deceleration. Once I was happy with how the acceleration for the boost felt, I moved on to hooking up a new boosting particle system. So my player's ship already has a propulsion particle system for the fire trail behind the ship, and I was debating dynamically altering that particle system to show a sort of boosting effect, but I decided instead to add a boost specific particle system and then switch between the two on the fly as the player turns boosting on and off. I took this approach because I thought it would be more modular and reusable down the road. I could even use the boost propulsion particle system as, say, the base propulsion system for a different type of player ship, and then just tweak it slightly as required to get, a brand new effect for that ship as well. So in the end, I'm quite happy with the result. I like the bluish white flame a lot. It gives that effect of burning really hot while boosting. So next up was to add a boost meter UI element so that the player could always see how much boost they were using. After some quick experimenting, however, I decided almost immediately that I didn't want to have a dedicated UI element communicating this information to the player. The action in the game is going to get really hectic with a lot of enemies and fast movement, And I want the player's eyes always to be focused on their ship and their immediate surroundings. I don't want them having to look in their peripheral vision at some type of UI element to understand how much boost they have or they've been using. So after doing these initial tests, I really didn't like the effect of having this UI meter on the screen in front of the player. And so I knew I had to try to come up with a more creative solution for this. So I brainstormed for a few minutes and came up with an idea and immediately got to work on it. So knowing that the boost system is supposed to be a risk-reward type system, it would be great to visually communicate to the player that if they boost for too long, bad things are going to happen to them. So I came up with this idea of dynamically modifying the boost propulsion system so that it acts like a fuse that moves towards the player's ship as the player boosts. When the fuse runs out, then boom, the player's going to die. So I wrote out this basic algorithm for calculating the fuse decay rate based on the percentage amount of boost the player has used compared to their max boost value. I think it's turned out quite well. The effect is pretty cool, and it does give that feeling and impression of a fuse moving towards the ship as you're boosting. After I hooked up the boost fuse logic into the game, I came up with another idea. So I want to encourage the player to try to destroy as many enemies as possible when they're boosting. So I thought it'd be cool to reward them with an enemy destroying blast wave that is created when the player stops boosting. The size of the blast wave should be determined by how many enemies the player destroyed while they're boosting. So I already have the player destroyed explosion hooked up in the game, so when it came to test this idea, I used that as the post-boost explosion just to save time. After a few new functions in my code, I got a test version up and running fairly quickly. The goal here is to create a unique post-boost explosion particle system whose actual size will be driven by the amount of enemies the player destroyed while boosting. So that's one of the polish items I have moving forward, is to actually hook up a new particle system for this effect. So overall this week, I'm quite happy with how the player boost system has started to come together. I still have a few more things that I want to tweak and add polish to. Some of those things include hooking up controller rumble, creating a unique boost, post-boost explosion particle effect, adding a little bit of screen and player shake as the player gets really close to destroying themselves when they're boosting. I was also thinking about updating the acceleration algorithm to work more on a curve so that it isn't a linear acceleration, to more accurately reflect how it would actually work to boost in a ship. So I've added all these things as polish items to my Trello checklist, and I hope to get to those coming up next week. So that's it for this week's video. Like I said, I'm really excited about the new boosting system that I've been working on. Next week's plan is to continue working on that and bringing it up to a higher level of polish. I'm also on vacation this week from work, so I'm excited to do some game dev and also actually play some video games because I don't get a lot of opportunity to do that these days. So yeah, that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, hit the like button and feel free to subscribe. All right, thanks. See you in the next one.